everyone. Welcome to another edition of Strength Through Stress, brought to you by Top Virtual Staffing Solutions, wherein we grow, learn, and innovate. Let's all do that all together. And we just want to go ahead and appreciate you guys. If you can follow us all on our social media account, so just search TVSS or Top Virtual Staffing Solutions. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at this information right here. All right, so for today's session, as always, we're going to have a review for the journal, Willpower and Growth Mindset, and stress-prone personality. I think I just deleted the Y there after I added the phrase codependence. All right, and we are going to go ahead and have a new set of journaling about willpower and growth mindset. And as always, we always apply what was discussed in Session 6, Psychology of Stress, Part 3, wherein we discussed critical thinking, scientific thinking, metacognition, and higher order thinking skills. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Implicit consent. And some of these things, as a disclaimer, again, I have to go ahead and share this every session, that this is only for educational and informational purposes only, not prescriptive. And if there's any emergency that comes about, feel free to go ahead and call 911 right away. All right, so grand rules, these are things that we have discussed on Session 6, so we can go ahead and skip through these. And then why we identified as strength through stress and not stress management, please watch that session as well. All right. We always highlight a different nonprofit organization for every session. So we want you guys to donate to worthwhile causes for each. And for today's session, that would be the Columbia Action Council, for that matter, of Howard County. So please go ahead and share this to everyone and donate accordingly. They're really doing a lot of good things in relation to all of the other nonprofit organizations here at Howard County. So if you are anywhere else in the world, so look for these organizations that organize all of the other nonprofit organizations. So feel free to go ahead and reach out to them, okay? Now, if you want to contribute to all of the nonprofit organizations equally, please go to our GoFundMe page. We would appreciate that. And a big portion obviously will go to these nonprofit organizations and it will be shared equally. And a small percentage, just go ahead and get our stuff here going, as well as a college fund for Miko over there. So why free? We just want to go ahead and highlight as well that we have these free virtual town hall sessions. And here we have, we discussed immigration during COVID-19 with Attorney Nyberg. So please check that out accordingly, and all of the other future and other previous virtual town hall sessions we've done. Okay, so do you have questions for me, Miko? You're good? You're on mute, so I don't know if you're speaking or...
I don't have any questions.
All right, sounds good. So let's jump.
My video is slow. Sorry.
The what? I'm sorry?
My video is slow. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. We're good. Okay. Okay, so Journal 15, this is what we discussed last time. And in terms of fear, there are multiple things that we can be afraid of. And so this time around, Miko, care to share one or two here that you are afraid of? And yeah, let's discuss it a little bit further that you're willing to share to the whole world. You're on mute.
I would be afraid of loss of sense. Yeah, can't talk right now. Sorry. Loss of self-control.
Okay. Why is that? In terms of losing self-control?
Because most times when someone or me loses control over something, I might not do something I'm super proud of, so
Okay,
something I have to fix.
sounds good. And go ahead.
Sorry. I was just thinking of something else, but no, it didn't fit. So,
Okay, that's fine. All right. Anything else that you want to go ahead and share here?
nope.
Okay. And then as you can see here, it's continued next session, which is today. So we'll discuss that a little bit more later, but we'll extensively discuss it on your end later on. All right. I just want to be clear, though. I don't think you mostly lose your self-control. I think you have episodes which is just like any human being, just like any kid. Correct? You're on mute.
Yes.
Okay, so I think you've been pretty solid with this. So the fact that you're able to go ahead and sit down with these sessions, write your notes, and so on and so forth, I think you're doing well in that regard. Okay? All right. Let's go ahead and proceed with the other one regarding brain training, meditation, and focus on breathing. And you know what? Right on cue, this is something that we can continue to do to improve our self-control. So there's one thing of us discussing about it or actually doing it. So let's pause for 2-3 minutes here. All right. And I know you're putting in notes, but let's just concentrate on breathing right now. Of slowly inhaling. Pause. And then exhale. If you want to close your eyes, you can go ahead and do that. So I want you just to focus on breathing. And then exhale. Breathe in. And release. Let's do about 3-4 more rounds, as long as you slow things down in terms of your breathing. All right. Is that what you were doing, or you were accessing a whole different types of web pages? Were you focusing on breathing in and breathing out? There, you're on mute. Were you?
Yes. I just had to fix something real quick. My spelling.
Okay, that's fine. But ideally, when you're focusing on breathing, you're not thinking about anything else. And I know you want to do well with your notes, which is fine. But we'll talk more about this later, okay? Okay. All right, so this is what we discussed last week in terms of growth mindset. What do you prioritize with the relationships that you have? Do they help you to become better? Do they help you to work with your challenges, whatever challenges that you face? And do you feel encouraged to go ahead and learn continuously and to become a better person overall? So is there anything here that you want to discuss personally?
I think relationships working. Relationships encourage you to learn continuously. They encourage me because they don't, or I don't actually. I don't know what they're doing, and I want to know.
When you say they, who they? I'm sorry.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
When you say they who? Who are you talking about that you have relationships with?
You, or my grandma, Mama Lerms.
Okay. So we what? I'm sorry. Go ahead. So now I understand who they are.
So you're doing video editing. Mama Lerms is doing sewing. You're doing Azure, Microsoft. I don't really know the other names.
Okay.
Sorry, but yes.
So do we? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And Mama Lerms is she's helping a lot in the kitchen.
Okay. So with everything that we're doing, are we encouraging you to learn continuously with all of that?
Yes.
Yes. So you're a little bit interested a little bit more with Azure and see how sewing really works and
Yes.
helping out in the kitchen, whether it's cooking or cleaning dishes and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Good examples. Okay. So critical thinking, as always, if you want to learn more about the intellectual standards wherein we apply it to elements of reasoning in order to develop intellectual traits, please watch the 6th session on strength through stress. So is there anything here specific that you want to discuss from the previous session? Miko, you're on mute.
Sorry. That would be my perseverance.
Okay.
My perseverance during the time of my schoolwork.
Okay.
I have to keep on doing these assignments and modules and tasks. So.
Okay.
And that's not what I'm being forced to do. It's what I want to do.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
My schoolwork is my perseverance.
Okay. And that's a really great example. And that's the last phrase that you identified in terms of, because you want to do it, you want to complete them. Really important. But in relation to the discussion last time on personality, is there anything here that you want to clarify or have a different point of view?
No.
Okay. So it's good that you're using this to other aspects of your personal life, which is fine. But ideally, you're applying critical thinking in relation to the previous session. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. But that's a good start. Okay. So we'll just continue with that. All right. So speaking of the previous session, is there anything that you can create, evaluate, analyze, or apply? Or do you have a certain level of awareness that's a little bit better or a little bit clearer on how you process information? Or is there anything that you want to test out in terms of any problem that you are dealing with or working with?
Or Oh, okay, so I would apply my, or I'm sorry, not apply, analyze.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to analyze how I want to analyze how should I say this? I want to analyze what scientists are doing to decrease the chance of the pandemic right now.
Okay. And I think, go ahead.
And I also want to Nope, never mind.
Okay. Speaking of analysis, did I spell analyze correctly, or should it be
No.
only one N?
I think it's only one N.
Oh my gosh. I've been using this phrase, this slide for so long. I mean, sometimes I type, I do not making excuses here, but I type so fast and then I
Yeah.
go and get things done.
You just think because you type so fast,
Yes.
you just forget that you did already.
So that's terrible. Speaking of analysis, here I am analyzing. Something's wrong here. And I double checked with you just to be sure. Am I seeing what I'm seeing erroneously? That's what makes us human beings. We make these mistakes, but we get better.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So, but going back to what scientists do to continue to work with the pandemic, I know I sent you the Coursera course regarding COVID-19 in terms of contact tracing. Maybe that's something that we can do as well in the future. Okay. All right. Cool. Good stuff. So let's move on to another personality trait here. Do you have any questions? None? Okay. All right. So with codependent personality traits, what we want to discuss is a stress-prone personality with inability to cope effectively. So when you have a codependent personality trait, and if this is a very strong characteristic of yours, generally speaking, when we deal with stressors, then we cannot cope effectively. And the reason why I chose this picture is that as we are physically distancing ourselves, are you so dependent on other people on the computer, over the internet, to build such relationships with, if you may, so that you're totally dependent with them. So what I want to differentiate is codependence versus interdependence. What it means is that nobody can live alone and be able to survive and thrive. We need other people. But do we need the other people wherein we can take care of ourselves and take care of others? Or it's more of, I'm just depending on everybody else. Does that make sense, Mika? So that what codependence is. And that's the reason why I chose this picture, is that are you being dependent of other people on the other side of the computer? Okay? That you're shackled to do so. So, again, this is what it is. Dependent on others. And you want that they also become dependent of you, instead of growing interdependence. So you depend on somebody else, and that's the only thing, without really taking care of yourself, or you desire so much that these other individuals depend on you so much. And that's where codependence is. Ideally, it's interdependence, wherein you are helping other people out, but they're not totally depending on you all the time, and vice versa. Were you about to ask a question, Mika?
No.
No? Okay. All right. So, codependent personality traits wherein the addiction or activities or processes, such as shopping, gaming, TV watching, and any other activities such as drinking, taking in drugs, and so on and so forth. These are codependent personality traits wherein you're addicted to activities that may not necessarily be beneficial to you. So I know we play Scrabble a lot, but are we playing Scrabble 24/7? Yeah, I mean, I've had those days, yes. But is that something I'm doing every day? No. Okay. Does that make sense, Mika?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So that we get to control whatever activities that we're doing, and that's one of the codependent personality traits.
And one of the reasons why we are doing Scrabble is because we're also learning.
We're also learning. It's not just a matter of playing and playing and playing and that's it.
Scrabble has supremely improved my grammar and my revising.
Revising of written manuscripts, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Manuscripts.
Good stuff. Yes. As long as you're using it to your benefit and it's exercising your mind, that's fine. But speaking of gaming, if we're doing it all the time, then that's a whole different story.
Yes.
Okay. Good stuff. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Enablers to be dependent. It's not helpful. The reason why I chose this picture, we are in a physical therapy practice. Ideally, we don't have people using crutches that they don't have to. I really don't know if this person really needs a crutch. That's not for me to decide, but that's what it is. Enablers allow other people to become dependent of other people, and that's the enabler will go ahead and come in. You should be allowing the other person to be able to walk and stand on their own. Just the same thing with crutches. You don't want to be using crutches if you do not have to. So if you're able to move around and walk safely without hurting yourself, then don't use a crutch. The same thing with other human beings. If you do not need to depend on other people all the time, then great. Then continue to go ahead and carry yourself and be the best version of yourself. But again, we understand that sometimes we need some help, and that's completely fine. But again, if we're both able, I do not understand why I have to start using a crutch all of a sudden when I don't have to. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what enablers do. So please watch out if you are an enabler as well. The next personality trait is you are an extreme approval seeker. Of course, it would be great if we receive some level of approval, but if we constantly think about, I want to be liked, I want to get thumbs up in my social media, and so on and so forth, if that's the only thing that you're paying attention to, then you may have codependent personality traits. That you just want approval and that's it, and not necessarily what you did good for that matter. Or you're doing things because I just want to be liked, or I just want to get or receive approval. Does that make sense? Mika?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. Now let's move on to the next one, perfectionist. And I know we have discussed this in previous sessions. We focus on progress, on us continuing to go ahead and get things done. I could be annoyed with a misspelled word here or there. Ideally, I should not have. I should pay attention. Maybe, speaking of dependence, maybe I have become dependent on Microsoft Word, wherein I will see a red line if something is misspelled. And then now PowerPoint is not doing that. So maybe I have to go ahead and find ways on how to go ahead and do that so that I don't make mistakes. But I should not be dependent on it. But at the same time, if I'm aiming for perfection and I don't get to do these sessions, and that's a whole different story. So we find balance that we are progressing well enough and we're always trying to be the best version of ourselves without really aiming for perfection. And that's what codependent personality traits. I need to be perfect. I need to look perfect. I need this to be perfect just to go ahead and get things done. So we have to be careful about that. Next one is super-overachievers. I want to have a medal all the time with whatever that we do. And here I'm seeing here SSPT Live, Clearwater, Florida. So this is fine. This is good. But are we doing things always trying to get a medal all the time? Hopefully not. Hopefully it's something that we're doing and doing good that's helping us to continue to move on. But just like with seeking approval, I want a reward, I want an award, I want a medal for anything and everything that I do. And if that's what we're doing, then again, you are not dealing with stressors as well as you can be. And that's what it is for super overachievers as another personality trait. There's nothing wrong to get achievement, but if that's the only purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, then we need to be careful. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to another one. Crisis managers. So, of course, you mentioned earlier regarding the scientists. Oops, my sensor went out. In terms of the light. Let's see here. All right, there you go. Okay. So you mentioned earlier regarding crisis managers, regarding pandemic, how the scientists are working on this. And the personality trait here is that, no, I am not saying the medical doctors are crisis managers and they have codependent needs. I think your light went out as well, right?
Yeah.
I think you're okay. So
Yeah,
you're fine, unless if you want some light. So for crisis managers is that they're always waiting or making a catastrophe of something that out of nothing. I'm sure if the medical doctors and scientists had their way, we would have closed earlier and identify specific rules and regulations for us to be able to take care of ourselves. Go ahead.
You spelled crisis wrong.
Oh, I'm glad that you shared that. The crisis with an E means multiple crises. Crises with an I, the second vowel, that's only one. But when you spell it with crisis, with an E, it's multiple crises happening. So for example, here, sure, the pandemic happened. That's a crisis. Not having protective equipment, that's a crisis. So again, going back to this, I'm not saying that the medical doctors have codependent personality traits, but if they had their way, they could have, again, closed earlier, identify what's the best thing to do in terms of changing behaviors in order to limit the spread of COVID-19 and having 120,000 people dead. So a codependent personality trait is that we're making a crisis out of nothing, that's one. Or if indeed there is a crisis, then now you're trying to go ahead and solve things all at the same time. Does that make sense, Miko? Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Next one is extreme loyalty. I've identified that dogs are loyal beings. But what we have to be careful of is that, again, the most important word here is extreme. Meaning, am I just being loyal to you even if I know you're doing bad things? And that's where enablers go ahead and come in. We have to be careful of that. So it's good to be a loyal friend, but sometimes being a loyal friend, it doesn't mean that I'm just saying yes to everything, even if it's wrong. So we need to be careful about that. Next one is martyrs. And I put it in quotation marks because there are people who are indeed martyrs. But some people are trying to go ahead and sacrifice themselves without really having the need to make that happen. So with martyrs, we have to be careful of that, of trying to sacrifice ourselves even if we don't have to. And that's an extreme codependent personality trait. And I, again, put it in quotation marks because there are real people who are such. But we have to be careful if you're just doing that for yourself without any legitimate reason, none whatsoever. Next one is manipulators. And I know you have seen this image before. So for manipulators, we have to be careful that you are manipulating others for them to be dependent on you, or for you to be dependent on them. That you are making somebody guilty because they're not doing anything to benefit you, or makes that other person to feel guilty because they're not allowing you to help them out. In terms of manipulators, we have to be careful of that as well. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Victims, and I put this in quotation marks. There are people who are indeed victimized, and to that, my heart goes out to you, and hopefully you are getting the necessary help. But there are other people wherein they're just victimizing themselves for the sake of victimizing themselves, just like for martyrs. We have to be careful of such. So there are indeed real victims, and there are people just victimizing themselves, and that's another codependent personality trait wherein you think that everybody's out to get you and trying to harm you and so on and so forth, when in reality, they're not. Another codependent personality trait is that you feel that you are not enough, that you are not adequate. You feel hopeless or inferior, as you can see here. So, and I understand that some people may be facing this in this COVID-19 reality. So be careful, watch out for it in relation to this. In terms of codependence, in terms of personality traits. Next one is reactionary. So what would happen here if I push the first domino?
They're all gonna fall down. It's a domino effect.
It's a domino effect. That's why you have that phrase. Reactionary is that if you think one happens and then all of a sudden you believe everything is going to topple down. So we have to be careful about that. So sure, for example, for me, when COVID-19 hit, it was a little bit difficult that there's a lot of things that could be impacted, which rightfully so, that took place. But you need to go ahead and find ways wherein it could stop. And that's what it was as well for the spread of COVID-19. We had to stop and be physically distant in order to reduce the transmission from one person to the other and impacting the whole community. So in terms of codependent personality traits, we have to be careful of being overreacting to everything that's taking place. Moving on to the next one, external referencing. If you would judge from this picture is that I'm not sure what they're doing, but are they trying to go ahead and say, who has a better sandal? Who's wearing a sandal better? or skirt
No,
shorts. So meaning yeah, go ahead.
it's the foot at the bottom, the croc.
That's what you're identifying as the best one?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not really sure what the motivation of the picture is, but that's what it is, that sometimes we're trying to go ahead and share ourselves and then trying to identify who's better with what. And you're trying to have somebody else to identify, oh, I'm wearing my sandals really, really well, that you're waiting for somebody else to do that. So you reference yourself all the time or most of the time and comparing yourself to other people. And
Bragging.
that's another codependent personality trait. Next one is lose emotional boundaries. So if I spill all of a sudden here all the problems and all the worries and concerns that I have, then we have to be careful about that. And if you would see from this picture is that even on the left side right there, right, even if there's a boundary, it seems like that's a cliff. So in how you express your emotions, how loosely do you make everybody else know about that? So in terms of codependent personality traits, is that you're crying all the time or expressing yourself in grief or whatever, just to almost everyone. I'm not saying you should be expressing yourself. That's not the point. But is it timely? Is it with the right person? So if you're talking to your counselor, sure, pour your heart out. If you're talking to your significant other or your loved ones, that's completely fine. But if you're doing that with your neighbor, with somebody in the grocery store that you just met, and so on and so forth, then that's a whole different story. It shows you are codependent or having codependent personality traits. Next one is all about creating impressions. So just like the external reference component, that you just want to impress. Oh, I need to have this body. I need to have that type of hair just to impress somebody else. I need to have that vehicle or car just to impress somebody else. That's all about the outside, not necessarily on the inside. I have nothing wrong with the vehicle here or the female here who's a model. I'm not sure, I don't know what their motivations are. That's not my point. But my point is that some people are presenting it as such, that they are like that I need to impress other people, and that's it. That's the only objective that they have. All right. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and move on here. You are unsure of your own perceptions, and I've shown this picture over numerous times. Meaning, are you seeing what you're seeing and experiencing things as clearly as possible? Or it's a little bit opposite. So that's another codependent personality trait wherein you are not sure of how you perceive things. And that is why going back to critical thinking in terms of clarity as one of the major components. And if you don't perceive well, then you lie to oneself. For me, the way I perceive things are for people who keep saying fake news, they're the ones propagating fake news. What you need to identify is how scientific it is, how, going back to COVID-19, it seems like there's still some people denying this reality, and they think it's fake news. We have to be careful about it. Science says so, and there's so many signs to go ahead and dictate that, and that's around the world. It's not just in one respective community, and that's it. So we have to be careful about that you continuously lie to yourself of what it is, because you have issues in relation to identifying what is real or what's not, and your perceptions are so skewed of what's fact and what's not. All right, before we move on to review, what can you say regarding codependence personality traits, Miko? How did you understand it?
That you have you're codependent. I don't know how to say it, I'm sorry.
Okay.
On people or items. So you have you think you need it, but you don't. You want it.
Okay. All right. So, yes, first, you are saying it correctly, codependence. You want to say it again?
Codependence.
All right, wonderful. So that's what it is that you need to be validated by other people. You think your being is based on how other people view you. And your aim and objective is to please other people as well. I'm sorry, you said something?
I said no. I was answering.
Oh, okay, all right. And then the other thing too is, again, extreme dependence on others. That's what it is. That's the bottom line. That again, there's nothing wrong on depending on others, but if you're extremely doing it all the time, that you can't take care of yourself, unless if you're clinically or medically can't do it, and that's a whole different story. But if you're rather able, just going back to that crutch, and here we are in the physical therapy practice, if you can do it without the crutch, why not? All right, so let's move on to journaling now. All right. So continuation of last time regarding fear is that any specific fear that has control over you. Okay. And how do you work with this fear? And what strategies can you apply to work with fears? That's the most important thing. So I can't exactly remember what I mentioned last week regarding what I'm afraid of. Right now, for example, or sure, fear of rejection of not being liked by somebody else or what have you. I'm not going to say that's controlling my life, okay? But how do you work with this fear is that if your intentions are well, if you mean well, then you should be fine. And what strategies can you apply to work with such fears? So next week, I want to hear from you, Miko, on how you deal with the fear of losing self-control. Is that good? Okay. All right. So that's what it is with this journal. The next one is, here I am talking about willpower and brain training meditation. Like what I mentioned earlier, there's something about talking about it or actually doing it. And they've identified that if we do this 20 minutes a day of slowing our breath 46 times in a span of 60 seconds, that should help us. And guess what? Going back to self-control, if we need to slow things down, especially our breathing and just concentrating on that, that should help all of us to gain a better level of self-control. So on that note, Miko, do you think this week this is something we can commit to? I know we were trying to plan our schedule now that school is over. Maybe after we bike and after we go ahead and shower, let's do some brain training meditation, or after lunch. Let's do it about 20 minutes. What do you think? You don't have to commit now, but I want you to start thinking about it. Okay? All right. So we'll go ahead and plan accordingly. Let's go ahead and apply this in our lives. Speaking of application, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next, regarding growth mindset, is that we need to stretch ourselves. And challenges will always come and arrive, but do we thrive on these challenges? And we focus on not only what's possible, but even the impossible. Because if we start putting boundaries on ourselves, on what we can and cannot do, then we're not going to grow. And I think one of the examples I've identified is that before they've identified you cannot run a 100-meter dash for 10 seconds until somebody said, no, you know what? I do not believe that. I'll run as fast as I can, and I'm going to break that record. And that's why records continuously get broken, because you go beyond the possible. That's why the world record in 2003, I know you have that book, Miko,
Yeah.
and I tell you, you may want to go and let go of that now or whatever, because I'm sure majority of these records have been broken already in one shape or form. And that's what it is for growth mindset. Are you about to say something else?
No.
Okay. All right. So we're about to wrap up here. So again, Strength Through Stress. This is Sundays, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Life and Learner Success. We will have it in the next hour or so. Workout Buddy. We have it on Facebook, 10 a.m. on Eastern Time. And then the happy hour, Video Kiss Scrabble. Please join us, 10 Eastern Time. All right. So see you next session. Thank you for joining us. And these are our references. Speaking of references, oh my gosh, now I'm realizing as well, there's a misspelled word here. Oh my goodness. We'll all get better. And I'd rather have it catch it. All right, see you and take care.
Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video informational and educational. Please share our videos and subscribe to our channel. If not, my dad will not give me dessert.